This is the drive shaft of a 2005 Volkswagen Passat. And as you can see, the CV boot there has torn and the CV grease is coming out and it's being slung about. You can see it on the control arm and on the brake caliper and on the strut. So this has to be changed. I started by removing the great big bolt that holds the axle into the hub. I did that while it was on the ground. I removed the center cap of the wheel and with a large torque wrench backed that out. The inner flange bolts require a triple square bit. It's a special little 12-point bit. It's kind of like a Torx, but it is different. It's called a triple square. And the way I usually undo these is I'll put my ratchet in one and then use a pry bar against the neighboring one, and then I can use that as my leverage to hold it to keep it from spinning, and I can loosen it up. I've now removed one of the sway bar links, and by removing the sway bar link I can use this support post, and I can use this support post to jack up the front suspension. And you can see how much it moved. It articulated upward. With the sway bar connected, the sway bar would start to flex and it would reduce the travel of the control arms and the wheel hub. So I've lifted it up so that it's just about to lift off of the lift arm here. So it's about as high as I can get that to go with the spring in place. So with that wheel hub lifted all the way up, that's going to give me enough clearance to get this axle all the way out. There we go. So one used axle out. One new axle ready to go in. I've put a little anti-seize on the threads, on the splines here, to make sure that the splines don't corrode and rust into the hub someday. This little ring on the end, this is your ABS sensor ring. That's how the ABS sensor knows the wheel is turning, by measuring those spaces. So I'm going to feed this up in. Get the splines lined up. There it goes. Cut my zip tie off. I'm ready to bolt that into place. Putting a little anti-seize on these bolts as I put these back in. And these get torqued to 29 foot-pounds. This is the new axle bolt. You always change these axle bolts. The axle comes with it. It's a stretch bolt, so the last axle bolt has been stretched to a certain amount, and they don't want you to reuse it because they don't want you to re-stretch it. So what I've done here is I've taken a metal bar and I've threaded in 2 lug nuts, and so this is going to hold the hub, keep the hub from spinning while I do the initial torque on this axle bolt, which the initial torque is 147 foot-pounds. And then you turn it another 180 degrees, or a half revolution. So we'll start with the 140 degrees. All right. So that's the 140 degrees. I'm now going to take my bar off, put a wheel on, and put it on the ground for the final 180 degree rotation. So I'm going to use a really big torque wrench to have the leverage to tighten this up. I don't know what the ultimate foot-pounds is supposed to be because, again, you do the initial tightening at 149 foot-pounds, and then you do a 180 degree rotation. So what I have here is an angle gauge, a digital angle gauge, which I've never used. This is the first time I'm going to use it. But the idea is you attach this to your wrench, and it will measure the rotational angle as you tighten. So we're going to see. So I've set this torque wrench at 350 foot-pounds. We'll see how many degrees it takes to hit 350 foot-pounds, if we get there at all. I think we might. I bet the final torque is somewhere, in that range. So bear with me as I learn to use my torque angle gauge. If you don't have a torque angle gauge, what I'd probably do is start with your wrench straight up and down and do 90 degrees, and then reset it and then do another 90, and that's your 180. So for this, let's see. I'm going to put this gauge up here where I can reach it. I'm going to start. Start my angle. Actually, this is where I get tension, so I'm going to start it here. Alright, so I'm going to start my torque. So I'm up to 80 degrees. Now I'm up to 137 degrees. $168 degrees. 180 degrees. So it did not reach 350 foot-pounds. And in fact, it stayed kind of steady. It didn't get that much harder because, again, I'm stretching that bolt. It's a stretch bolt. So try to do that 180 degrees. Don't rely on a final torque. And then when you're all done, you put the center cap back.